Here's the definition of a romantic confession. A declaration of love is a form of expressing one's love for someone or something. Listen, the only declaration that happened in Mali was the declaration. Welcome folks, I'm going to be discussing everything that's wrong with Mikasa. I'll talk about Eren and Mikasa's so-called confession scene, chapter 50 scarf scene, Kakuaku culture, Japanese culture, all that good stuff. After that, I'll discuss all the parallels to the founder Ymir. For the end, I'll even elaborate on Mikasa's memory manipulation plot hole, and why it is still a plot hole. I promise this video will be enlightening, so remember to like and share the video. Now let's open with a word of prayer. Oh, Isayama, thank you for single-handedly ruining your own manga to pander to toxic Aramika shippers who more than likely didn't give two shits about the actual story to begin with, for our sake. May I destroy their arguments with this single video, like you destroyed your own story with a single chapter. But unlike your final chapter, may this video actually make sense. May I destroy Mikasa harder than Jean did in the extra pages of volume 34. Oh Lord Isayama, thank you. I promise I won't let your biggest mistake go to waste. And all subjects of Ymir say, Eren. So let's begin. Chapter 123. The "what am I to you" scene is not a confession. What is it about the scene that classifies it as a confession? That doesn't make any sense. Eren confesses by asking a question. Mikasa confesses by lying to his face. What Mikasa did isn't called a confession, that's called deception. Or, don't tell me, is it a confession because a guy in Mappa's staff labeled it that way? Most of the AOT anime staff are Aramika shippers. Do you not think they forwarded their own biased interpretation of the scene? Do you not remember when Wit Studio replaced some of Armin's scenes with Mikasa, reduced Mikasa to an Eren bot, all for that Aramika fan service? Hello? They're biased. If in the anime they label this guy as Armin, despite how it is clearly John, does that mean this guy is Armin? Hello? But before we go further, you need background knowledge. But don't worry, it's not going to be 20 minutes worth of straight recap. Let's start with what Isayama said in his interviews. Pay close attention to the year and time the interviews happened relative to each other. In 2015, in Gekken Shingeki no Kyojin, Volume 3, Isayama states, "For Eren, rather than a lover, Mikasa's presence is more like a mother to him. The love towards a mother is considered valuable. However, at the same time, there are annoying parts as well. Just like towards one's actual mother, Eren will start to grow up when he becomes independent from Mikasa. I might draw this scene one day." The key takeaway: in 2015, Isayama had the mindset that Eren viewed Mikasa as a mother figure rather than a lover. Moving on, in 2014, in the Attack on Titan guidebook interviews, Isayama states, "With my mentality as a male mangaka, I think it is pitiful if Mikasa's life is only about staying together with Eren. However, to Mikasa, it is a wonderful thing to be with Eren forever." Another example, in 2014, in that very same Attack on Titan guidebook, Isayama also said that Mikasa was adopted by the Jaeger family and viewed Eren as a brother. Based on what Isayama said here, he wanted to write Mikasa moving on from Eren because he describes her obsession with him as pitiful. If you want to argue that she did move on, you're wrong. She didn't move on. You cannot use her small character arc in chapter 138 where she quote-unquote moves on from Eren, when Isayama tosses that out the window the very next chapter. In chapter 139, Mikasa still keeps his sweaty, stinky scarf, and she still visits his grave even after 3 years to mourn. The extra 8 pages made it even more pathetic. Mikasa is not only visiting his grave regularly, but she is dragging along her husband and child and later on her children's children. She visits so regularly that she dies while visiting his tree, and she gets buried with his scarf still around her neck. Anyways, the key takeaway. In 2015, Isayama was doubling down on his previous mindset from 2014. And since he was doubling down on that their family, not lovers mindset a year later, in 2015, you can draw the conclusion that even up to 2015, Isayama had the mindset that these two are just family. Now, let's check out this scarf scene. In 2013, chapter 50, do you see where I'm going with this? We have this moment with Mikasa. If you don't already know, Aramika's love pointing at the scene whenever people ask, "Oh, did Eren have mutual romantic interest in Mikasa?" Aramika's refer them to this scene as if it answers that question, which it doesn't. Two obvious reasons why they think it does. Reason number 1, the 2021 interview with Isayama, where Isayama states that when drawing chapter 50, he was too shy to draw Eren and Mikasa kiss. The editors thought they were going to kiss, and looking back, Isayama believed he should have drawn the kiss because Mikasa probably wanted a kiss. A couple problems with this. Problem number 1, this is an obvious retcon to make Eren throwing a tantrum less out of field. How do I know? Because the 2014 and 2015 interviews gave us the idea that even up to 2015, Isayama never intended for Eren and Mikasa to be lovers, and that Eren just viewed Mikasa as family, a mother figure, and that Mikasa viewed Eren as a brother. So if in 2013 that Isayama also believed that he should have drawn them kissing, then this would mean that he would have drawn Eren kissing his mother figure, and Mikasa her adoptive brother. Now, a rebuttal to the mother figure argument would be that Eren didn't see her as family. Hilarious, by the way, since I literally showed you moments ago that Isayama in 2014, after chapter 50, says Mikasa viewed Eren as a brother. Isayama said in 2015 that Eren viewed Mikasa as a mother figure rather than a lover. And if you say that these two interviews are too old, in chapter 121, which released in September 2019, Grisha refers to Eren and Mikasa as son and daughter. Before my wife, before my kids, before the people of the walls are eaten. She might not be his stepsister since Grisha didn't marry Mikasa's mother, but she is their adopted daughter. And using chapter 121's logic, makes her Eren's adopted sister. This means that even in 2019, Isayama was still reinforcing the idea that Mikasa and Eren are a family rather than lovers. Problem number 2. The original reason why Eren didn't kiss Mikasa before Isayama pulled the JK Rowling on us in the 2021 interview was that by kissing her, he would have accepted death. Eren refused the kiss and believed that if he was going to die, he'd rather die fighting. Chapter 80, Erwin's speech before the suicide charge. How did Flock summarize Erwin's words? You mean, if we are going to die, we should die fighting? Erwin responds, yes. If we are going to die, we should die fighting. Does this sound familiar to you? I'll give some more elaboration. What does Erwin say himself before and during their suicide charge, and how does it relate to chapter 50?
Be honest, are all of us riding to our deaths?
Yes, we are.
And since we're dying anyway, you're saying that it's better if we at least die fighting?
I am.
But wait, if we'll die anyway, then who cares what we do? We could just disobey your orders, and it wouldn't mean a thing, would it?
Yes, you're precisely right. Everything that you thought had meaning, every hope, dream, or moment of happiness, none of it matters as you lie bleeding out on the battlefield. None of it changes what a speeding rock does to a body. We all die. But does that mean our lives are meaningless? Does that mean that there was no point in our being born? Would you say that of our slain comrades? What about their lives? Were they meaningless? They were not! Their memory serves as an example to us all! The courageous fallen, the anguished fallen, their lives have meaning because we, the living, refuse to forget them! And as we ride to certain death, we trust our successors to do the same for us! Because my soldiers do not buckle or yield when faced with the cruelty of this world! My soldiers push forward! My soldiers scream out! My soldiers rage!
But now, with the 2021 interview, Isayama wants everyone to believe that Eren refused her kiss not because he had that unrelenting resolve to continue fighting, refusing to not buckle or yield even when everything seemed hopeless and everyone was going to die, and totally not because Hans was literally being eaten just seconds ago, and totally not because Eren had a mental breakdown that he was still useless despite attaining the Titan powers, but rather because Isayama was just too shy to draw them kiss. Mikasa accepted that they were all going to die. That is why she went in for the kiss. She was the one to buckle, she was the one to yield, but Eren refused to accept that they were going to die, and shows this by rejecting the kiss and continuing to fight, continuing to rebel against their cruel world. And by the way, they live because he chose to fight. Reason number 2, because Eren and Mikasa associate Mikasa's obvious love for Eren loving her back. This doesn't make any sense. Just because Mikasa loves Eren doesn't automatically mean the feeling was mutual. They point to this scene where Eren says, "I'll wrap that scarf around you as many times as you want, forever." Listen, this scene and its dialogue isn't exclusive to just being romantically inclined. This scene still works even if Eren viewed Mikasa as family, a sibling, or a mother figure. But no, Eren and Mikasa don't want that. They want the only interpretation of this scene to be Eren reciprocating Mikasa's feelings. They want you to assume that Eren's dialogue here is actually the declaration of his great love for Mikasa. That's right, assume. And speaking of assumptions, let's talk about Japanese culture. Who better to explain it than Boy Who Saw Freedom? So we all know about this guy, right? The culture guy. Look at this guy. You can already tell how incredibly smug he is. Mikasa's answer isn't a confession. So Eren's "what am I to you" was a confession of love after all. Canon. That is laughable. You know what is actually canon and doesn't require comedic levels of headcanon scope and external information from biased sources? John and his horse Shalong, and how hard he bred Mikasa until she bore many of his children from his seed. Ending defenders, stop projecting your inability to read by claiming that this guy was actually Armin and that this kid was just adopted. It's kind of embarrassing. Now let's read what this obvious Eren Mika shipper has to say about the What Am I to You scene. Boy Who Saw Freedom says, the What Am I to You scene between Eren and Mikasa is officially called a confession scene, Kokuoku scene, in the script for the anime. Ned is in response, how is it even a proper confession in any sense of the word? Mikasa didn't confess, she told him he was family. Eren didn't confess, his mouth uttered a question, not a confession. His question posed the implication that he didn't view her behavior and feelings positively. An implication reaffirmed in the context, keyword context, where he brought them up in chapter 130. Oh, I will explain that context in a bit, don't you worry. Boy Freedom responds, in Japan, they don't really do direct confessions or say I love you until way after the relationship is already established. There's a whole Kokuoku culture and is seen as more romantic and pure. At first to be subtle, and that directly saying you like or love someone has high chances of rejection. While younger people have gotten less subtle over the years, some examples of traditional Japanese Kokuoku are things like I want to eat your miso soup forever, or I want you to make me miso soup forever. From now on you will stay with me as my family. I'll protect you forever, etc. Or I'll wrap this scarf around you as many times as you want, now and forever, as much as you want. This is a textbook example of Kokuoku right there, and it was from Eren to Mikasa. So you can see, Eren is no stranger to Kokuoku. The subtle What Am I to You confession is perfectly in line with his pattern or way of subtly confessing his feelings with Kokuoku. If you didn't understand what little boy Freedom over here meant, he basically said, oh, you didn't see that non-existent romantic development between the protagonist and their so-called love interest? Well, the fact that they had a romantic development so subtle, you could have sworn they never had any of that development to begin with. It's actually good writing because Japanese Kokuoku culture. Japanese culture? Really? Yeah, I can definitely see Isayama's Japanese culture seeping into his work. Ymir being raped and tortured by King Fritz? Well, she loved the guy for 2,000 years. Seriously, the themes of freedom and rebelling against your oppressors are universal themes. These themes are not restricted to Japanese culture, you xenophobic racist. And Japanese values? Yeah, I can definitely see what they value through the Japanese fanbase's priorities. For example, take these scenes and guess how the Japanese rank them. Erwin's speech, single-handedly convincing all the scout recruits who are morally drained and broken to follow him as he leads them all to their deaths. Necessary sacrifices just so Levi could reach the Beast Titan. Best leader you can get. Even the viewers would follow him on a suicide charge, right?
Because my soldiers do not buckle or yield when faced with the cruelty of this world. My soldiers push forward. My soldiers scream out. My soldiers rage!
Or another scene, Kala Yeager's death. The death that ignited Eren's resolve, goal, and determination to exterminate every single one of the people responsible for her death. Kala Yeager, the person Eren valued the most out of anyone, because she knew that he was already special, just because he was born into this world.
La chancla y el bañador. Voy a la playa, había subido la marea. Jesús. Jesús. Había subido la marea y encontré una paella.
Or the best betrayal scene in all of Shonen. Listen, I hate the ending as much as the next guy, but this will forever be the best scene you will ever experience in the Attack on Titan anime. The OST and the entire reveal is all perfect.
帰れなくなった故郷に帰る。俺の中にあるのはこれだけだ。ベルトルト、ライナー。
Goosebumps. This scene is peak fiction. Nothing else in AOT comes close. Now let's move on to the next scene. Mikasa's scarf confession. The scene where she says, "Oh, Eren, thank you for wrapping this scarf around me." Eren rejects her to continue fighting rather than accept death. "I'll wrap this scarf around you as many times as..." Okay, let's rank them. Of the scenes I showed, take a wild guess which scene the Japanese fans ranked number one. Number one. If you guessed the most obvious peak fiction, the creme de la creme, untouched, unruined by chapter 139, Reiner and Bertolt's betrayal scene, then you'd be wrong. The number one was Mikasa's scarf scene. Japanese values, by the way. Oh, come on. Kukuruku culture? Japanese culture? Asian culture? Really? Really? Of course. How could it not be? Tree of Yggdrasil? From Norse mythology? Definitely from Eastern culture. The very first giant Ymir? The father of all the Jotunar? All from Norse mythology? Definitely Japanese culture. And Norse mythology? A Western mythology of the Scandinavian people from Iceland, which is Western, is by definition Eastern culture. That's right. I bought God of War Ragnarok, did all of the main quests and all of the side quests, and when I completed the game, thought to myself, wow, what a brilliant Eastern culture game. Aesir, Vanir, they're simply Japanese culture. Ending Defenders clearly understood the story better. Let's keep taking the piss. What else did Isayama take influence from? Let's think. The show, Game of Thrones, which everyone knows is peak Japanese culture, based on the series A Song of Ice and Fire by the Japanese man George R.R. Martin, set in the fictional location of Westeros, based on medieval Britain, is Eastern culture. Or what about Breaking Bad? Breaking Bad? You mean the American crime drama television series set in New Mexico? With an American protagonist? With an American antagonist? Drug trades in the Mexican cartel? Do you know what that means? It means Japanese culture. But you know what? Enough about these well-known Japanese media. Let's go back to Attack on Titan. Are the people on parody Japanese? Are they Eastern? Are the scouts Asian? South Germany has a whole walled city? 3 established walled towns in Germany? Like the 3 walls in Attack on Titan? But Germany is Western. The name Eren is Turkish, meaning saint, and Jaeger is a German surname, meaning hunter? And Mikasa is an Asian, which is a minority bloodline. What does minority mean? Small part representing less than half of the whole. But that would mean the culture in parody would mainly be Western culture. But I guess ending haters didn't understand the story like ending defenders did. So what could this be then if it's not a confession? Very simple. This is a question. A question Eren asked Mikasa to prove whether the future memories he received from touching Historia's hand could be changed. More exposition time. Chapter 90. Eren receives memories from touching Historia's hand. Chapter 123. The scouts head into Marley to try and go for some peace talks. They attend an Eldian rights group meeting, and this group are sympathetic towards Eldian people, as long as they are not from parody. Eren sees this, and he leaves. The next time the scouts see him, we see him at a large camp, crying. Why is he crying? We'll get back to that. So, after Mikasa finds him, Eren asks her, "What am I to you?" And Mikasa responds with, "Family." Later in that chapter, Mikasa wonders if things would have gone differently had she given him a different answer, other than family. Chapter 131. Eren walks through the streets of Marley, depressed at the thought that he was going to kill everyone there. Men, animals, everything. Depressed because they never found another way. Depressed that he can't just accept sacrificing the people of parody, his people, for the sake of the outside world. Depressed, thinking himself a hypocrite, saving Ramsay even though he knows Ramsay is still going to die in the rumbling. And this is where we find the reason why Eren cried in chapter 123. Because before Mikasa found him, he was crying for Ramsay, saying sorry. Let's start over again with elaboration. Chapter 90. Eren receives the memories from touching Historia's hand. What memories did he receive? Chapter 123. The scouts visit Marley. From the moment the the chapter starts, Eren's demeanor is solemn, grim. It's like he saw all these things happen in his memories, but he still came along because he wanted to prove his memories wrong. Mikasa, his supposed love interest, who you are supposed to assume he had fallen head over heels over since chapter 50 in the scarf scene, gives him an ice cream. Eren has nothing else to say but ice cream. I saw this in my old man's memories. Eldians in the interment zone rarely get to eat it. What a nice romantic mood. It's like Eren is more focused on more important matters like an inevitable mass genocide rather than Mikasa's feelings. Next panel, Armin and Mikasa don't give a single fuck about Eren and his depression. It is shown through dialogue that they chose to ignore it. Now before you say, it's a question, not a statement or an answer. Alright, did Armin and Mikasa choose to ignore Eren and his depression post time skip? Yes, they did. They noticed it and chose to ignore it. Now, when the scouts attend the Eldian Rice Group meeting, Eren leaves. Some people, like Fox and Anime, argue that this is evidence that Eren didn't see everything in his memories. Now sure, I can buy that Eren didn't see everything in his memories because of dialogue in chapter 121. However, I believe Eren saw this particular memory of the meeting. Why? Because if you actually read the manga and the chapter, you would notice how Eren kept harkening back to what he saw in his memories. And you could conclude that he did see this meeting in his memories, but he didn't want his future memories to be true. Eren came to Mali and the Eldian Rice Group meeting to prove whether that particular memory was true and if it could be changed. And since the events played out like what Eren saw in his future memories, he became even more depressed and walked out the meeting. Where did he walk out to? Chapter 131, he walks out into the streets of Marley. And here is where we get his internal monologue. Pay attention to not only the dialogue but also the use of ellipses. Very soon now, they will all be dead. No, I am going to kill them. That I will kill them is already set, which means we also never found a way for parody to survive. All of this will be wiped out. The homes, the people, the animals, the lives, the dreams. Eren looks towards a pregnant mother and remembers his own mother. What would Mom think? Before we continue further, what are ellipses used for? They indicate the omission of words from quoted material. Hesitation or trailing off in dialogue or train of thought. He's hesitating because he does not want to kill these people. But say you argue that it was simply used to separate the individual sections of text. Alright, what about this dialogue? All of this will be wiped out. Ellipses. The homes, full stop. The people, full stop. The animals, full stop. The lives, full stop. The dreams, full stop. No ellipses here. But there are ellipses to all the other times Eren is referring to all these innocent people dying. Could this not imply that his mind was trailing off whenever he thinks about killing all these people? Does this one single page in chapter 131 not emphasize Eren's despair of knowing he might not be able to change the future? That he could not change anything, that he was still useless despite attaining godlike powers. Chapter 50, dialogue of his breakdown. Hello? Ring any bells? Chapter 68, where he looks at Mikasa effortlessly carrying a barrel, her strength making him remember how his weakness cost him his mother. And before you ask, yes, I saw plenty of delusional Aramika shippers changing the scene's context too. Oh, Eren was looking at her because he was so madly in love. And it literally makes you wonder whether these NPCs read the same story as us, since they just change the context of the story whenever they want. But I'm going to talk more about context later, don't you worry. Chapter 97, Eren cries again about his weakness. He asks Reiner how he became so strong. Reiner, how do you become that way? Like you? Or Mikasa? What do I have to do to be like you? If I don't change something, my life is going to end without me having done a single thing. Reiner responds, tells Eren, just do what you have to do. Just keep moving forward. It's all we can do. Yeah, that's right. I just have to keep moving forward. Chapter 100, Declaration of War. Eren keeps moving forward until all of his enemies are destroyed. He got the power, the ability, the strength, and the will to do what he had to do. And what did he achieve? He ate the Warhammer Titan and killed the high-ranking military in Marley. Chapter 121, Zeke tells Eren, you're as powerless as ever. And Eren makes a very familiar face in response to that. And guess what? Sick and tired of his inability to change things, he literally breaks the chains of paths to get to Ymir, to convince her to give him the Founding Titan powers. Powers he would use to destroy his enemies who want to kill him and his people. All those chapters emphasize Eren's hatred of his inability to change things, and his sheer will to find a way to change things despite that. Chapter 131 is doubling down on his need to change things for the sake of his life, his friends, his nation, his people. He is depressed because the events he saw in his memories were playing out the same way. His memory of the meeting ending the same way despite him coming along with the scouts and hoping it wasn't true drove him to the conclusion that the future could not be changed, that he was as powerless as ever to change things. Let's continue with chapter 131. Eren talks about whether the Eldian people should die. Aren't we Eldians the ones who ought to die? Just as the King of the Walls chose the path of death for himself? If nothing else, isn't there just too big a difference between the number of people who'll die on the island and the outside? Plus, it's the fact that if all the Eldians go wiped out, the Titan problem would disappear with them. Look at his facial expressions. But I just can't accept an end like that. Did you notice this entire internal monologue did not include Mikasa for a moment? Chapter 139, Eren says he was doing all of this just to arrive at the result of Mikasa's choice. And ending defenders do love to say that Eren never cared about the people of Parody. He only cared about his friends, right? So why is he wasting time talking about the Eldian people on Parody and how he can't accept an end like that? Seriously, this is an internal monologue. How is Eren lying to himself in his own internal monologue, with no one but himself to hear his thoughts? Where was it established that Eren was an unreliable narrator? Was it only in chapter 139, the final chapter in the series? So Isayama established that in the very last chapter, with no foreshadowing he was unreliable before. That's crazy. Continuing on, Eren sees Ramsey, notices he's the boy he saw in a future memory. Eren saves Ramsey despite knowing it's pointless because Ramsey will still die. Eren says he's just like Reiner. No, he says he's worse than Reiner. Then Eren breaks down crying in front of Ramsey, tells him, I'm sorry. Then comes Invaders' favorite panel of chapter 131. When I learned that humanity had survived beyond the walls, I was so disappointed. Now, using Invaders' logic, which is the most literal interpretation of the scene, this would mean that Eren is a psychopathic mass murderer who wanted to destroy the outside world because that was in his nature. That was what he wanted to do. He wanted to do it because humanity did not exist in Armin's book. If the outside world was peaceful and wasn't actively seeking the complete annihilation of his people, the Eldians, Eren would have still done the rumbling because humanity simply existed. Or, how about this? Could it possibly be that Eren said he wanted to do it because he was frustrated? I'll call this the frustration interpretation. I'll sidetrack for a moment, but you'll understand how this loops back to the main point of Eren's future memories. Chapter 121. Eren strive for freedom from the moment he was born, not just when he saw Armin's stupid book. If all Eren was fighting for all this time pre-time skip was all because of Armin's book. Chapter 84. Why did Eren forget this very important dream of Armin? Why did he forget when Armin's idea of freedom was also his idea of freedom? Seriously, he was never free inside the walls of Parody. And after all the sacrifices made, after all the pain, after all the suffering they all endured to free humanity from the grip of the Titans and leave those walls, they find out they had jumped out the frying pan and into the fire. Let me simplify it. Eren strove for freedom outside the walls. They went over that wall for his freedom, found a wall of Titans. Guess he's still not free. Eren strove for freedom from the Titans. He fought and broke that wall for his freedom, found a wall of Titan shifters. Guess he's still not free. Eren strove for freedom from the Titan shifters who wanted to claim his power and exterminate his people. So he fought and broke that wall for his freedom. Oh, that's great. That means Eren is finally free. But when he reached that ocean, when he was finally supposed to achieve the freedom he long sought after, turns out reaching the ocean was not freedom because they're still not free. He is still not free. There is still another wall that he has to go over. Another wall he has to break through. Another wall requiring more pain, more suffering, and more sacrifices just to get through. Here, Eren's frustrations could have reached a tipping point, and he wanted nothing else but to eliminate the new wall in front of him. Now, Invaders argues that Eren would have wanted to rumble a free world because of school casts. A spin-off Isayama says is canon. Listen, do not use a spin-off as evidence. The main source material has to be able to stand by itself. But fine, you want to use volume 31 of school casts? Volume 33, Eren regrets becoming the threat to humanity. Tell me again about school cast. Now let's get back to the actual source material. Chapter 131. Let's read Eren's dialogue here again, but this time, let's read all of it. You see, it's to save the island, to save Eldia. The reality of life beyond the walls was nothing like the world I dreamed about. It was nothing like the world I'd seen in Armin's book. When I learned that humanity had survived beyond the walls, I was so disappointed. So, I made a wish. I wish for it to all be wiped away. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. They were always just there, Wherever I looked, from the day I was born, those miserable walls. Eren was going to rumble the outside world because the outside world wasn't what it was like in Armin's book. So much so that even if the outside world wasn't seeking to destroy him and his people, Eren would have still chosen to do the rumbling. But even if he did destroy the outside world, he would not have had the freedom that he wanted. How about this? Eren was going to destroy the outside world because the world wasn't what it was like in Armin's book. The world didn't have his freedom like Armin's book. But you're basically saying the exact same things as Invaders. Shut up. I'm not finished. Invaders' point is that Eren was trying to find any excuse to do the rumbling because the outside world was not what he saw in Armin's book, because humanity just existed. Invaders' point is that even if the outside world wasn't trying to annihilate his people, he would still have done the rumbling to destroy humanity to make it look like Armin's book. Invaders' point is that Eren did not do the rumbling out of necessity, but because he just wanted to rumble the world because of Armin's book. My point with the frustration interpretation is that had the world not wanted to kill him and his people, he would not have destroyed the world to make it look like Armin's book. Because it wasn't so much the environmental scenery or the fact that humanity just existed outside the walls that disappointed Eren, but because after everything, the freedom he sought was hidden behind yet another wall. Let's focus on the specific dialogue in chapter 131, which is just 7 pages away from Invaders' favorite panel. They were always just there, wherever I looked, from the day I was born. Those miserable walls. Do you see it now? The reality of life beyond the walls was nothing like the world I dreamed about. Was Eren dreaming about the literal landscape? About the literal empty plains without any humans? Or, if we do not take this dialogue so literally, was he talking about a reality beyond the walls where he was free from any walls that trapped him like a cage? The walls were that cage. The Titans were that cage. Now it was humanity that was that cage. It was nothing like the world I'd seen in Armin's book. Again, was Eren literally wanting to see the rivers of fire, frozen water, empty plains that were in Armin's book? Armin's book, where there were no more cages, no more walls. It was nothing like the world he saw, because the real world outside was just another wall, just another cage. When I learned that humanity had survived beyond the walls, I was so disappointed. So, I made a wish. I wish for it to all be wiped away. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Eren was disappointed because humanity simply existed outside the walls, and that it is not like Armin's book. That is the literal interpretation of this panel. Eren was disappointed because in Armin's book, outside the walls would have his freedom, but in reality, outside the walls was nothing but another wall, another cage. It just so happened that this new wall was humanity. If the outside world's humanity were all nice, Eren would not have rumbled, even though humanity did not exist in Armin's book, because humanity here would not be trying to take his freedom. Chapter 121. If someone tried to take my freedom, I wouldn't hesitate to take theirs. The outside world was taking Eren's freedom and his people's freedom, and he won't hesitate to take theirs away. And Eren could do that. He could make his own wish come true. Eren wasn't so weak as he was before. He was finally able to believe in himself. He found the strength, the resolve to do what he had to do for himself, for his friends, for his people. He has that power. That said, Eren was never a psychopathic mass murderer who wanted to kill innocent people just because. That's definitely a very compelling and interesting motivation that should be recognized for what it is. Now, you might argue using chapter 139 with this panel. You might say that this supports Invaders' whole idea. I'll show you why this doesn't work. Frustration interpretation. Eren wanted to do the rumbling to protect his people and get the freedom that he wanted by destroying the wall that caged them. This wall just happened to be humanity. To destroy humanity would rid the wall that was denying his and his people's freedom. Invaders' interpretation. Eren wanted to do the rumbling because humanity simply existed outside the walls. And this was not like Armin's book. He wanted to kill humanity outside the walls to make it look like Armin's book. Then even if Eren finished the rumbling, Eren would still be looking for his freedom. Chapter 139 answer. Eren wanted to do the rumbling because he wanted to get to Mikasa's choice that would make the power of the Titans vanish from this world. That was the reason why he kept moving forward. So, that's the real reason why, right? Wrong. He changed his motivations for the rumbling in the very same chapter. Chapter 139, second answer. I don't know why. I just wanted to. Eren wanted to do the rumbling because he has no idea why. This panel in chapter 139 is not the same motivation as Invaders. Because even for Invaders' take, Eren's motivation was because he wanted to rumble because the world wasn't what it was like in Armin's book. Chapter 139. Eren's motivation was because he wanted to rumble because he has no idea why. If they are the same, it makes no sense for Eren to say, I don't know why. If they are the same, then have Eren say, oh, it's because of your book, Armin. Because remember, Eren is talking to Armin. Armin's book, hello? But no, people are buying the idea that Eren was a psychopath. Eren is not a psychopath. He wanted freedom for himself and for his people to not be exterminated just because they were born as Eldians. Eren saw his future memories, he saw that he would do the rumbling, but he did not want to kill innocent people. So, he travels to Marley because he saw the Eldian Rights Group meeting in his memories. He saw them hate the Paradisians in his memories, but he wanted to check if it could be different, if it could be changed. But it didn't change. It played out like his memories. How do I know? His dialogue after he leaves the meeting has the tone that suggests he was confirming a suspicion. Very soon now, they will all be dead. No, I am going to kill them. That I will kill them is already set, which means we also never find a way for Parody to survive. I guess the future doesn't change. You know what? Let me give an example. You gain the memories of the future. You saw that your mother divorces your father. Your teacher tells you he's gay. And your nation will lose the war and be completely destroyed. You know what could happen to you? You might be in denial. Not because of the gay teacher, but because of your parents divorcing. You will do everything in your power to prove that the memories you saw of the future are not true. Again, not because of the gay teacher. But what happens when your mother divorces your father? Will you still be in denial? Will you admit that the future memories you saw are real? Alright, say you do believe they're real. What are you going to do to test how much of the future can you change? You don't want your nation to be destroyed, right? So you enter your classroom. You see that your new teacher is a guy. What are you going to ask him? Know that you are a woman. You go to your teacher and say, what am I to you? The teacher looks at you funny and responds, sorry, I'm gay. With 2 out of the 3 future memories fulfilled, will you just accept that your nation will lose the war and be destroyed? Or are you going to do everything in your power to try and change that outcome? Would you hope that along the way, something convinces you that the future could be changed? But say you disagree. Say you disagree based on the simple fact alone that I made an error in the timeline. The timeline is wrong. Eren didn't go out into the streets of Marley after the meeting with the Alien Rights Group. After the meeting, they don't see him until after his attack on Marley. And looking back, I could see how I made that blunder. Why did I make such a mistake when I know I read it correctly before? Because I was too focused on bashing this retard that I literally forgot the order of the events. I forgot the order of events because I was too focused on chapter 131. Why else did I forget? Because hatred blinds people, and to say I hate this guy is an understatement. But alright, don't worry, this is an easy fix. Let's fix the timeline. Let's make it the correct timeline. Instead of Eren finding Ramsey after the Eldian Rights Group meeting, it's actually Eren going ahead with waiting for the declaration of war before attacking Marley after the Eldian Rights Group meeting. Oh my god, this changes everything by making it worse. My incorrect timeline actually downplayed the meeting and overstated the importance of Eren's question to Mikasa. Eren finds Ramsey. He thinks the future can't be changed. Mikasa finds him at the camp. Eren asks her. Mikasa answers, like what he sees in his memories. After that, Eren and everyone else visit the meeting. The meeting goes like Eren's memories. You know, I was laughing half an hour ago when I realized how my timeline wouldn't work. Because if they enter the meeting, then after the meeting, Eren leaves and finds Ramsey. Then Eren asks Mikasa. Then they have that same meeting the next day where Eren leaves. I accidentally made a time loop. But again, I ask, how does this change the point I was trying to make? Very simple, it doesn't. In both timelines, my point was that Eren was trying to find an alternative solution to the rumbling because he does not want to kill innocent people. He was trying to find any indication to suggest that the future memories he received could be changed. But anyways, what does this all mean in Attack on Titan? What's the point of all this context I gave? Context I showed through the manga panels of the source material, even though there was a little fumbling. To show that this scene is not a confession. Mikasa did not confess in the scene because she lied to his face. Eren did not confess in the scene either. He asked the question, what am I to you? Not out of some romantic inclination, but because he wanted to see if the future could be changed. Everything Eren was doing prior to the rumbling was trying to find proof. any proof that the memories he received were not set in stone, whether he could change the future of him killing innocent people for the sake of his nation. What Am I to You scene was not the only instance of this happening. Chapter 105, Sasha gets shot by Gabby. Connie comes into the room and announces that Sasha died. Eren asks Connie a question. Connie, what were Sasha's last words? A question. I repeat, a question. Or are you going to try and convince me Eren confessed to Connie right here? He just declared his undying love for Connie in this panel. No, he was asking because he knew that Sasha was going to die, and he knew her last words from the future memories he received. He wanted to check if the events would play out the same in his memories. Would Sasha's last words be meat? The same words he saw in his memories? Or would she say something else? Connie tells Eren her last words were meat, and Eren's demeanor shifts instantly. He starts to break down and laugh. Does his reaction look familiar to you? Does his coping mechanism look familiar to you? He laughs like he did in chapter 50. Chapter 50? Oh, you mean the chapter 50 where he broke down crying and laughing because he found out he was as useless as ever and couldn't change a damn thing? Don't you think Eren laughing in chapter 105 could be him breaking down over not being able to change the future? How he was not able to change Sasha's death despite chapter 108 where he told her he wanted her to live a long life? Or maybe he concluded that he had to sacrifice her to achieve his goals? Or are we going to argue that this is Eren and Connie's kukuiku scene? Are we going to argue that Sasha was never his friend to begin with? Chapter 107, where Hanji confronts Eren. Eren gets mad and asks her if there was another way. Chapter 107 again, Eren says, "It is dangerous to entrust our fate to the potential to shake the earth. Wouldn't it be better for us to use all the time we have left to consider every option possible?" Going by Invaders' logic, Eren wanted to destroy the outside world the moment he knew humanity survived outside the walls. You know, for a guy so hell-bent on destroying the world, who wanted so badly to destroy the world just because he wanted to, because the outside world wasn't like Armin's stupid book, Eren seemed very desperate for an alternative to the rumbling. Despite saying this in chapter 131, which takes place during their visit to Marley, before the Alien Rights Group meeting, he still asks Connie about Sasha's last words in chapter 105, which was after the declaration of war. This means that even after the meeting, after Eren's despair was at its peak, he was still checking if the future could be changed. Eren wanted to find an alternative to the rumbling in chapter 107. He asked Hanji if there was another way in chapter 107. He waited for Hizaru's response in chapter 108. He still visits the Eldian Rice Group meeting in chapter 123, and his walk around Marley in chapter 131 is him being depressed about not being able to change his future memories. It's like Eren wasn't a psychopathic mass murderer or something. It's like Eren was trying to find a way out of doing the rumbling, out of having to resort to killing the people outside the walls that he saw he would do. But I know exactly what you'll say. But Eren is a psychopathic mass murderer. Just look at all these innocent people getting killed. Eren is not a psychopath. He is a soldier who became ruthless because of the relentlessly racist actions of the outside world. Are we going to argue that the men who dropped the nuke on Hiroshima are psychopaths because they killed people? Or were they soldiers who had to do horrendous acts of violence for the sake of peace? Now, before you say, oh, the nuke was unnecessary, killed lots of innocent people, simply put, the Japanese surrendered after their homes got bombed. Eren made a drastic response to the rumbling, to a drastic action that the world was going to do. They were going to annihilate his people just because they were born as Eldians. And Eren's drastic response would have given him and his people's freedom. Now, Invader says that the outside world would not have attacked had Eren not attacked in Liberio. That even after Willy literally declared war, the outside world would not have actually joined in destroying Parody. Ignoring the fact that in chapter 100, these people were literally crying tears of joy at the thought of annihilating the Eldians of Parody. That they were more than willing to do their own version of the rumbling on the people of Parody. Chapter 108, the outside world do not want to talk because they want the Eldians to be the scapegoats. Chapter 98, Udo says that the outside world are worse than Marley when it comes to their treatment towards Eldians. Chapter 89, and they only have this better treatment in Marley because they are used for their military. The outside world are worse than Marley? Chapter 86, Marley, the people who fed an innocent young girl to dogs. Chapter 89, Marley and their men, women, and children who stoned Ymir even though she was a child. Chapter 1, Marley, the main reason why the walls were broken and the entire reason why there were titans outside the walls in the first place. Let's continue. Invader says that Eren did not become a cold-blooded killer. Invader says that Eren was always a cold-blooded killer.
And then Invader says that Eren was always a cold-blooded killer.
After his attack on Marley, Eren seemed to have changed into a cold-blooded killer, but that wasn't true. Eren had always been this way.
There seems to be a common trend amongst ending defenders where they don't check out basic definitions of a word. Do you know what cold-blooded killer means? It means to kill in a way that seems especially cruel because it seems to show no emotion. In Invader's favorite panel, what is Eren doing? Is he crying? Crying to who? Crying to Ramsey? Why is a cold-blooded killer showing remorse? In Invader's favorite chapter, what is Eren doing? Is he really feeling for the people he's going to kill? Why is a cold-blooded killer showing emotion here? Eren was not always cold-blooded. Cold-blooded murder is premeditated, as in cold and calculated. Therefore, there is no rage involved, just the means to an end. Chapter 6. Did Eren kill the human traffickers in cold blood? There was plenty of rage and emotion involved coming from Eren. Do you know what we call that? Hot-blooded. Listen, everyone and their mothers who followed the anime up to season 3 would have always described Eren as hot-blooded. Eren was not always cold-blooded. You know what else he's not? A psychopath. Even by the literal clinical definition of psychopaths, Eren does not fit into the clinical definition of psychopaths. Psychopathy is a neuropsychiatric disorder marked by deficient emotional responses, lack of empathy, and poor behavioral controls, commonly resulting in persistent antisocial deviance and criminal behavior. Eren is not a psychopath by the clinical definition of the term. Chapter 46, he was very emotional when he talks about how Reiner and Bertolt killed innocent people. It's like Eren was not characterized to be a psychopath or something. Psychopaths know what is right from wrong, but they don't care. Chapter 131, Eren knew what was right from wrong, and he showed that he cared an awful lot by being remorseful in front of Ramsey. Eren showed remorse. Majority of the manga, he showed plenty of control over his behavior, and he was anything but antisocial or criminal. And it's so funny to me, because while ending defenders say and brag that he's a psychopath who are deficient in emotional responses, they go up and tell you, this panel makes sense because Eren is showing emotions. He's just a 19-year-old boy showing emotions. Yes, he's not the Chad Eren that you all think he is. Listen, Invaders is one of the rare ending defenders that don't believe that post-time skip Eren was a facade. So this cold-blooded killer is not a facade. It's not fake. Which is it, ending defenders? Is cold-blooded killer psychopath Eren a facade or not? Either it's a facade because of chapter 139 and Eren showing emotions, Eren 19-year-old boy, Eren is not Chad, Eren is back, blah 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 blah. Or it's not a facade because Invaders needs it to not be a facade to forward his narrative of psychopath Eren. Well, continuing on, chapter 100, where Eren and his character development, which turned out to be fake, really shine through, and he tells Reiner he understands. He now knows the world was not black and white like the young and naive Eren would like to believe. Why is Eren a psychopath? Showing empathy. Eren understands now that Reiner destroyed the walls and killed innocents because Reiner wanted to save humanity. Eren says he's just like Reiner. And since Invaders' interpretation of the scene is early in his video, 16 minutes 30 seconds.
With that in mind, he confronted Reiner to hear the truth for himself.
Yeah, okay. Skipping forward to 37 minutes 26 seconds.
Eren was someone who would stop at almost nothing to preserve the immature, selfish dream that had awakened the day he learned about Armin's book.
You might interpret this dialogue as,
see, Eren said he's just like Reiner. Reiner was selfish and wanted to be like a hero, so Eren must also be selfish like this, since he also said he's like Reiner. Eren was selfish, and he wanted to destroy the world because of his selfish desires to make it look like Armin's book.
Or we could have a much simpler interpretation of this scene. Eren says he's like Reiner because he is going to kill innocent people to save humanity. His humanity inside the walls. Eren does not want to do it. But like what Reiner said to him, he has to do what he has to do. Eren is selfish here, just like Reiner, because he is the one to make that choice. Chapter 25 in the Forest of Giant Trees, where Eren also had to make a choice. Here, they're being chased by Annie. Let's read the dialogue. Eren, face forward and keep moving. You're telling me to look away from the battle? You mean leave our comrades to die and run? He's still fighting. All alone. Why is psychopath Eren showing basic empathy? Wait, I could fight on my own. Viewer, pay attention. Eren says, why am I always turning to other people for help? I should fight myself. Levi says Eren was a true monster No one can force him to submit. The difference between our judgment and yours is experience, but you don't have to fall back on that. Believe in yourself, or believe in me in the Survey Corps. Whether you trust in your own strength or trust in the choices made by reliable comrades. No one knows what the outcome will be, so as much as you can, choose whatever you'll regret the least. In this scene, Eren made the choice to believe in his comrades. He believed that they were enough. Chapter 28, this resulted in all of them dying because he did not make the selfish choice to believe in himself. He made the wrong choice. Eren says, I made the wrong choice. I wanted to believe in my comrades, and because of that, they all died. If I had believed in myself from the very beginning and fought. Chapter 66, Eren says, I'm sorry. Why is Eren sorry? Because he had to be selfish in this moment. He had to make the choice himself. Eren learned to believe in himself and learned how to make his own choices. Chapter 100, Eren was being selfish here because he made the selfish choice to believe in himself. He would not be selfless and believe in his friends when they basically did nothing for the past 4 years. He chose to be selfish and made the choice for them. Why did he make the choice for them? Back to chapter 25. Whether you trust in your own strength or trust in the choices made by reliable comrades, choose whatever you'll regret the least. Armin was anything but reliable. Why would Eren make the choice to trust in Armin when throughout the story, for example, chapter 11, showed that talking does not work? Why would Eren make the choice to trust in his comrades when his comrades achieved nothing for the past 4 years? By believing in himself, Eren would make the choice that he would regret the least, because the rumbling would not leave Paradis up to fate and chance. This ties back to Invaders again. Invaders says that Eren and Zeke planned the declaration of war. Alright, I'll give you that, Invaders. Why did Eren want the declaration of war? Because in short, this would mean that Eren could use the rumbling. Alright, why did Eren want the declaration of war to use the rumbling? Invader says to rumble the world because he wanted to. The world wasn't like Armin's book because humanity existed outside the walls, and that wasn't part of Armin's book.
Eren was someone who would stop at almost nothing to preserve the immature, selfish dream that had awakened the day he learned about Armin's book.
No. How about this? Eren and Zeke planned the declaration of war when Eren realizes after waiting for Hisaru's response and after attending the Elden Rise group meeting that the alternative solution of talking it out with the outside world is futile. Making peace with the outside world was hopeless. Why did Eren use the declaration of war in order to use the rumbling? Chapter 28, because he chose to believe in himself instead of his comrades. Because annihilating 100% of humanity outside the walls guarantees that they will not come and fight back. This is also why chapter 139 does not make sense. Eren suddenly chooses to trust the idea that Armin's ability to talk would finally work despite the entire story establishing that talking doesn't work. And guess what happens? The outside world comes to take vengeance on Paradis and they are destroyed. But I guess ending haters didn't read the story. Oh, but don't worry, this isn't the surviving 20% killing Paradis. No. This is clearly due to a civil war between Paradisians. Isn't that right, Invaders? Yes, that's right. Invaders believes this is due to civil war. Oh, but don't worry, Eren never cared about Eldia. Yes, that's right. Invaders also believes that Eren only cared about his friends. And he won't complete the rumbling because that would mean killing his friends. Very funny.
Finishing the rumbling would require killing his friends, a sacrifice he could never make.
With Invaders' interpretation of the declaration of war, Eren and Zeke planned the declaration of war because Eren wanted that declaration of war as an excuse to do the rumbling. Alright, but Sasha died. Sasha died because Eren dragged them into this with the declaration of war. Chapter 105, I guess Sasha was never his friend, right? Or what about the rumbling in the plane? Oh, colossal titans in the plane? Oh, you mean when Hanji died? Because of the rumbling? Chapter 132, I guess Hanji was never his friend, right? Chapter 139, Eren had no idea whether his friends would survive, but don't worry, based on Invaders' headcanon of Eren gaining memories from touching Ymir, he knew his friends would stop him, so that automatically means he knew his friends survived, despite this dialogue saying otherwise. Chapter 124, the moment Zeke loses control of his titans. His titans become mindless. These mindless titans were literally a threat to the livelihood of Eren's friends. Because why did Zeke lose control? Because Eren basically absorbed him into the founding titan, and Eren got his beast titan. And we know that Eren can control Titans from this panel in chapter 139. Yet, Eren still chose to not do anything about Zeke's Titans. Any of Zeke's Titans could have killed any of his friends. Now, back on track. I ask again, why did Eren use the declaration of war in order to use the rumbling? Because the alternative to the rumbling is the 50-year plan. A plan Invaders believes would 100% work. Definitely not a headcanon, by the way. The 50-year plan, which involves children eating their parents, which, chapter 107, Eren is against. Children eating their parents, which is King Fritz's ideology, which, chapter 122, Eren is against. And also, chapter 123, because Eren knew that the hatred of the outside world towards his people would keep growing within the 50 years until they inevitably declare war. Chapter 88, 50 years is not a time that Eren has because of his curse of Ymir. He was going to be the only one who had the will and resolve to go with such a drastic plan of rumbling the earth for the sake of his people. Why is he the only one with the will? Chapter 121, because Eren always strived for freedom from the moment he was born, not just because of Armin's stupid book. That if anyone tried to take his freedom, he would not hesitate to take theirs. Chapter 88, and Eren is the attack titan, which has always strived for freedom. Eren will achieve freedom for himself and his people, even if it means killing his friends. Chapter 130, this dialogue is quite literally juxtaposed with Eren finding out that Sasha died. Chapter 130, again, and if you read Cersei's post in chapter 130 on Reddit, you'll know about this. The bird flies away from the memory of Eren's friends and sets towards the light. Eren will leave his friends behind in order to achieve his goals of freedom. But enough about the declaration of war. Let's go back to Reiner. What does Eren mean when he says he's a half-hearted piece of shit like Reiner? What does half-hearted mean? It means showing no enthusiasm or interest. Reiner used to be willing to kill everyone inside the walls because he only knew them as devils. However, once Reiner came to know them, his interest to kill them left him. He became half-hearted because it would be easier to kill them if he only knew them as his enemies instead of his friends. When Eren says he's a half-hearted piece of shit like Reiner, Eren isn't saying he's a genocidal maniac like Reiner. He's not saying that he's selfishly doing this out of some book. He's saying that he can't even be enthusiastic or interested in killing all these people. Why? Because we had Eren's character development. Why? Because Eren is not a psychopath who wanted to kill, who was interested in killing innocent people outside the walls just because humanity did not exist in Armin's book. Eren is not a psychopath. He was trying to look for whether he could change the future of him killing innocent people. Yes, that's right. He was trying to fight against fate. Chapter 131, he was fated to kill these innocent people. Paradis was fated to be destroyed, but Eren would not accept a fate like that. He did not want to accept his fate of killing these people. He did not want to accept his island's fate of being destroyed. But don't worry, Invaders has that covered with determinism. Eren wanted to do this. This was Eren's choice. Yes, he wanted this. Listen, determinism equals no free will. No free will equals no agency. Invaders even doubles down on this. No matter what Eren does, the outcome of him doing the rumbling will always occur.
Just as Eren's choice to initiate the rumbling was an inevitability in the future he had seen, Eren's failure to complete the rumbling was also an inevitability in that same future. He couldn't even intervene and try to prevent them from reaching him in the first place, because Eren had seen them reach him and therefore knew it would happen. Finishing the rumbling would require killing his friends, a sacrifice he could never make. But as with everything else, Eren never had a choice in the matter to begin with.
Yeah, you know what we call that? Fate and destiny. Chapter 25. Levi says Eren is a monster. Nothing could force him to submit. A lot of Attack on Titan's story was about fighting against fate. You have it in the lyrics of Season 1 opening.
Wer nur seine Machtlosigkeit beklagt, kann nichts verändern. Der Junge von einst wird bald das schwarze Schwert ergreifen. Hass und Zorn sind eine zweischneidige Klinge. Bald eines Tages wird er dem Schicksal.
You have it on Vogel und Kefik.
Oh, but he still wanted to do the rumbling. He still did the rumbling.
Okay, but why did he want to do the rumbling? Because the world wasn't like Armin's book? Okay, no. How about this? He wanted to rumble to protect his people and to get the freedom he always sought for himself and for his people. Because if he made the wrong choice to wait for Armin's peace talks, they would have all died. Eren was fighting against fate. Because it was fated that they would not find a way for Paradis to survive. So he got the powers of the founding titan to finally defy that fate. But oh no. Come chapter 139, turns out Eren was controlled by Ymir. Eren was a slave to fate. Eren gave up and submitted to fate. But don't worry, Eren giving up and being a slave to fate is actually good writing because it's ironic. Yes, that's right, irony. Just the use of this one narrative technique automatically means this is good writing regardless of its execution. But continuing on, Chapter 121 and Chapter 131. A common interpretation is that Eren is referring to the freedom as that scenery. And this supports the idea that Eren did it because of Armin's book, because Armin's book twisted Eren's idea of freedom. Okay, how about this interpretation? Eren refers to that scenery as the view of his people finally being free. The scenery of Paradis without walls, because the walls are no longer needed, and the view of children being free from being oppressed or burdened by their parents. Eren refers to the scenery of the outcome of the rumbling. The scenery was not the process of doing the rumbling. Eren is not referring to the scenery of people being killed. If that was the case, then why is he above the Titan's team? Why isn't he viewing the carnage like Ymir was down below? Why was he asleep through the entire rumbling? Because Eren is not a psychopath. All of what I talked about is to emphasize two things. Number one, did you notice how Mikasa had nothing to do with Eren's motivations to do the rumbling? Did you notice how she had nothing to do with his internal monologue? The only reason why a very irrelevant character like Mikasa was made relevant was because of a last-minute effort to make her relevant in the final chapters. Not only did Siyama ham-fist Mikasa's relevancy, but he made the story revolve entirely around her last minute. Hey Eren, why did you say those hurtful things to Mikasa? Armin, I killed 80% of the world. Talk about Mikasa. Well, do you know about our founder Ymir? 2,000 years of suffering? Well, it was actually because she was in love. Not because of slavery, no, it was because she was in love. She wanted to be free from her pain of love. And the one to free her was actually Mikasa. Even though I was the one to free Ymir in chapter 122. So either Isayama forgot about the detail of Eren freeing Ymir in chapter 122, or Isayama retconned this moment to make Mikasa the chosen one last minute. So why did Ymir choose Mikasa? And Isayama knows he pulled it out of his ass. So you know what he does? A cop-out. Only the founder Ymir knows. Even the extra 8 pages were Mikasa-centric. Oh, thank you, Eren, for wrapping this scarf around me. I've been visiting your grave for 3 years. Because despite what Ymir thinks of me moving on, I never moved on. I dragged my husband, my child, my children's children to your grave for decades. I quite literally visit your grave until I drop dead. And then once I'm dead, Paradis gets destroyed in one panel. Because my love life is more important than the story. Number 2. All of these chapters showed Eren's inability to change the future memories. Chapter 123, Eren wasn't confessing. He was asking her a genuine question to see if she would answer differently from the memories he saw from touching Historia's hand. But she says the exact same thing he saw in his memories. He saw her say family, and now he sees her say family. This question did nothing but confirm to Eren that the future was unable to be changed. That they did not find another way for Paradis to survive. That he would inevitably kill and destroy the outside world. Chapter 123. Mikasa asked herself if things would have turned out differently had she given him a different answer that day. The answer is very simple. Yes, it would have been different, but the outcome would not be Eren and Mikasa running off like in chapter 138. Had Mikasa told him a different answer, had Mikasa actually confessed in the scene, do you know what Eren's response would be? He would be ecstatic. He would be overjoyed, and not because, oh my god, I can finally clap my Asian stepsister Suzurushi. Wrong. Her different answer would give him the proof he desperately wanted and needed to know that the future could be changed. That he was not completely useless. That he was no longer the boy who can't do anything. That he was not pathetic. That it would not be his fate to kill the people he saw in chapter 131. That it would not be Paradis's fate to be destroyed. And like I said earlier, after her different answer, Eren and Mikasa would not be running off together like in chapter 138. By chapter 139's logic, had Eren run off with Mikasa, he would have never received the founding titan powers from touching Zeke. fake, and since Eren would have never received it, this whole thing would have never happened.
Eren's ultimate lie was the claim that he hated Mikasa. Nothing could be further from the truth. He loved Mikasa and wanted to spend the rest of his life with her.
Furthermore, why would you think that Eren, who strived for freedom the moment he was born, fought, bled, and sacrificed everything for his freedom, and became the very embodiment of freedom, so much that he freed Ymir from her slave mentality, would wind up with a woman who basically did nothing but smother, coddle, and protect him, basically restricting his freedom the entire time, like an overprotective, overbearing mother figure who would not allow their child any degree of freedom because they might get hurt. I referred to this chapter earlier, chapter 80. How did Flock summarize Erwin's words? If we're going to die, we might as well die fighting. Erwin says, that is the sole way we can rebel against this cruel world. My soldiers rage, my soldiers scream, my soldiers fight. So why would Eren do nothing in chapter 138 as the outside world destroys him and his homeland? You want me to believe that Eren would abandon his friends, his people, his nation, and responsibilities, and just wait, watch, and do nothing as the outside world destroys all of them without a fight? That's definitely in line with Eren's character. This Kokuoku scene is not a confession because context did not make it a confession scene. Context I showed, context I gave through the source material does not make it a confession scene. The Mappa staff who labeled it as a confession scene did not understand the story.